Hi, hello, I'm Sam Harrison. I read, review and discuss fantasy and science fiction books, and today I'm going to be doing a non-spoiler review for The Gathering Storm by Brandon Sanderson and Robert Jordan. So this is book 12 of The Wheel of Time. To clarify, when I say it's going to be a non-spoiler review, there are going to be lots of elements of books 1 through 11 that I will have to spoil, but if you have read all of those books but haven't yet got to The Gathering Storm, then this book, you can safely watch this review without with knowing that there won't be any major plot points revealed. I'll talk. I'll try and talk loosely around previous books stuff, but when it comes to this specific book, I won't even be talking loosely. I will be completely steering clear and not revealing any big story details. So let's go straight into this. I was going to record this review on Friday, so I finished this Friday morning, just before I was due to start work, and I ended up starting work late because I had to pace around my house because I was so monumentally affected by this book, and this wasn't a big emotional affected, I wasn't crying or anything like that. It's just kind of, I feel like I want to say jubilant because of how good this book was and how bad it could have been. So this book, as we said before, this is the first book that Sanderson wrote, taking over the Wheel of Time series from Robert Jordan once he passed away. Jordan passed away in, I think, 2007, and this book came out in 2011. So a huge gap, considering that the previous books had been every 1 to 2 years. Obviously Sanderson was a fairly untested author at this time. He'd only had 2 or 3 books out, and he was given the job for this off the back of The Final Empire, the first Mistborn book, which a lot of people call Mistborn, but I will always call The Final Empire because it's a much cooler title. I should probably put this book down because I'll just be waving it forever. Let's talk more about this book. So, Sanderson was initially given the job of writing book 12 by Robert Jordan, and Jordan was like, well, here's all my plot points that I want to happen, and book 12 is the final book. So he was just doing that final book. Jordan had already written some, I believe, or at least had loose notes for the whole book. Even though he wasn't a planner, he kind of knew where the series was ending, and he had arcs for his characters, but he didn't specifically plan the books out. He kind of discovery wrote them. Sanderson is the opposite kind of writer. He's very much the kind of person who has everything nailed down, chapter by chapter by chapter. He has put one of the outlines for his books up as a part of his writing class, and he will literally write what's going to happen in the chapter, tons of bullet points of everything he has to hit, and that will link into a bigger, overarching story plan, which will link into internal wiki pages and everything. He's really nailed it down. And one of the big pros for this book, I love this book, just get it straight out there, I loved it. It's the kind of storytelling in long series that I personally absolutely love, because what this book really is, this book feels like a reward for having read 12 Wheel of Time books. So Sanderson is constantly referring back to things in the past, whether explicitly through not flashbacks, but like characters discussing or remembering them in their kind of POV narration, or thematically he will be referring to like events in the past, and sometimes he's explicit, like this reminded Rand of being in the box before Dumais Wells, or sometimes it'll be a little bit more subtle, and there's a lot of kind of, as we are coming to the end of this series, characters kind of thinking about where they've come from, how they started, their origins, their roots, and it's really, really good. It's so rewarding. It really makes you feel like, and I mean, this is especially true as well. Like, Knife of Dreams is excellent, but like the 2 books before Knife of Dreams were like good, not great. And I would even say that Crossroads of Twilight, which is book 10, is kind of weak for like huge swaths of the book. But while Jordan has kind of nailed down in Knife of Dreams maybe the most or like the least interesting plot line, which was the succession in Andor, that's been nailed down in Knife of Dreams. But in Gathering Storm, Sanderson very swiftly knocks out a couple of side plots, so that I also felt were kind of dragging. He injects some new drama and some new interesting wrinkles into relationships, like Fail and Perrin. They have a really interesting kind of new wrinkle added based off the back of Knife of Dreams. You get to see some really good stuff, and I very specifically absolutely loved the way this book ended. There's a huge chunk of this book is about the rift in the Aes Sedai, which I had kind of felt had gone on too long, and you can tell that this is something that Sanderson wanted to wrap up. Whether it gets wrapped up in this book or not, you'll have to read it. But you can tell that that was kind of a big aim for him, because that's a huge chunk of this story is about that. But it's almost the best that's been. I mean, it's really good in Knife of Dreams, actually, to be honest. All the Egwene stuff in the tower is really good. But getting to see the stuff that's happening on the outside of the tower in the Rebel Aes Sedai camp, while everything's going on with Egwene, was really well done. We've started to loop some characters together that had been kind of separated. So you have characters like Gawain is back in and he's, fairly, I don't want to say he's like a fairly big presence in the book, but he's a bigger presence in this book than he ever has been before. And you get some great stuff with Swan. I've said it before, but like the way that this book ends was really, really strong. It has a great tie-in to the Koreathan cycle. So much is working together in this book to reward you for being a dedicated reader. And I could imagine rereading the series and seeing all the clues and hints and explicit scenes and chapters that are referred to in this book, that that we're even referring back to characters from book 2. We're referring back to moments from book 1 in this. This gives me a lot of hope for Brandon Sanderson finishing up his Stormlight Archive series, because if he can do this with someone else's work, I've got a lot of faith that he will be able to nail that down. So this is, we are talking about book 12 in a 14 book series. So I've got, and there's also a 15 book series, I guess, because there's a prequel novel. But yeah, this was just genuinely fantastic. It had like, it almost felt like reading indie fantasy sometimes, because like when you read indie fantasy books, a lot of the time, like things like the Bound and the Broken and the Adan trilogy, they have a lot of they do a lot of self-reference. Jordan actually doesn't do that much in his books. He will repeat the same phrases a lot. So he'll repeat, arms folded under their breasts, or Nynaeve tugging on her braid. Like, he'll give these kind of quirks and personality tics to characters. And he'll use the same language a lot. But he doesn't actually do a lot of referring back to the series. So, like, there's a character that is really prominent in book 2. There's a character named Hurin, and Jordan just never wrote him again for the next 9 books. Like, Hurin is not in it. There is, in this book we also return to some major locations. So there's a few locations across the series that have been, massive culminations of storylines in that book that we've never gone back to. And I thought that was really, really well done. We get some good progression with what's going on with Matt and Tom and Tuon. And the Tuon stuff I thought was really well done. We don't get any rollback of a certain plot element to do with Rand that happened in Knife of Dreams that I was like, whoa, this feels like it's gonna get rolled back, but I guess it probably isn't. I'm gonna have to read more, obviously, to see where we end up with Rand as a character, and but really interested to see how that develops as well. It's really hard to not just sit here and gush for 20 minutes about this book. Like, if I had recorded this video on Friday when I had finished it, this would have literally just been me, like, unhinged screaming about this book. And I specifically held off on filming that because I didn't want this video to just be that. And I ended up like really holding off and being like, no, I'm gonna wait till I've like absorbed it and make sure that I've got my feelings straight on it. And this book really gives me the same sort of vibe. It gave me the same sort of like goosebumps and the same sort of feeling and the same like good vibes, I guess, as reading Of War and Ruin, which is the book that I've said in the past is like my only 6-star fantasy book. And I rated this as 5 stars, and I have to say I'd maybe be tempted to say that this is a 6-star fantasy book based on reading it. There's a lot of complications around that, in that obviously Sanderson does this thing with his books where the ends of them are incredible. Like, every Sanderson book has an incredible ending, has this like Sanderlange, where from the like 60-70% point he starts to kind of push these snowballs down the hill, and by the time you're reaching, the 80, the 90, the 95% mark, you are, you're in the path of a massive avalanche. And he does that incredibly well here, and this is maybe the best ending of a Wheel of Time book, like, ever. Sanderson's strong point is endings, so that is a huge point in his favour, obviously. And it's made me incredibly excited for the next books. Like, if I was not a booktuber and I was not reading this series with Matt, I would have probably picked the next book straight up. And there's very few series now where I'll be reading a book and I'll be like, I need to go straight into the next book. I cannot wait. I've decided not to start the next book until Matt has finished this one, because I don't want to do out spoiler chat and then maybe accidentally spoil something that's happening in book 13, which is Towers of Midnight, I think. There's a lot of something books in this series, but at least it's not a blank of blank and blank, you know. So yeah, I think with every Wheel of Time book, there's usually one or two characters that get kind of short shrift, and I kind of don't feel like that happens here. We even get some more time with Avienda, and I feel like she'd been largely neglected and kind of relegated to being a side character for Elaine over the last, basically most of the slog. We haven't really spent much time with Avienda since Ruidian, in like, God, was it like book 6? And then we've also, we spend more time with Matt, as I was saying, and Matt has done very well here. And I really like, he's kind of on this mission, or at least he says he's on this mission to save Moraine from the Aelfin, which is super cool. Like, the Aelfin were genuinely one of the kind of elements of the storytelling that I really tied on to and really hooked me early in the series. So it's great to know that we're going back, and also that Sanderson and Jordan seem to be tying in plot elements that we've been following for the whole series, like Snakes and Foxes and Noel and Jane Farstrider, all of these things that keep coming up over and over again. And you're like, oh, actually, these all come in and kind of collate together to the Towers of Midnight storyline and the kind of return, possibly, of Moraine. I'm still super interested to see how that particular storyline is handled, and that's another reason why I was like really wanting to read the next book. What I decided to do straight afterwards, I was like, I'm gonna read something that is very, very, very different, and then I've continued and I've read a second, now very, very, very different book, and that is nothing like Wheel of Time, in the hopes to kind of cleanse my palate and make me even more kind of excited and hype to read book 12. 12? This is 12, right? 13, unlucky for some, but not for Matt and Moraine, hopefully. There were, I did notice a couple of turns of phrase that I didn't feel were particularly Jordan-esque. Sanderson did hit all the notes. He called Vannon fat multiple times on like the same page, which was very, very funny when I was reading it. He got Swan Sanchez to use a ton of fishing metaphors. He did tug on her braid. He did cross the hands beneath her breast. You know, he nailed all of these are the specific things that Robert Jordan says all the time. I really enjoyed the 2-on POV chapters in this book. So there's only a couple of them, but the one of the 2-on chapters is one where we get to see another character from a major Wheel of Time character from her point of view, and I really, really enjoyed that. I think it's always really, really cool when you get to see major characters from the point of view of other people. So, like the Nynaeve, the Golden Crane flies for Tarmangaiden scene in Knife of Dreams is electric. It's like the best scene in the series, some of the best writing that Jordan has done, and it like properly had me like fist pumping as I was out for a run listening to it on the audiobook. And like that whole chapter is from the point of view of like a completely random person, and we get to see what a random person thinks of Nynaeve. We get some great Nynaeve stuff in this book, actually. I feel like she's kind of been treading water as well since she got married to Lan a few books ago. We also got some great Cadwallain stuff in this one. and the ideal wise ones have kind of come back into being relevant again in the story. Lots of really good stuff happens in this book. If you are, you know, if you're watching this without having read the previous 11 Wheel of Time books, I have hopefully not actually spoiled too much, but what I can tell you, it is 100% worth it for me so far. And like, I would almost tell people, like, you've got to read these 11 books so you can read this 12th one. And I'm super excited to see where this story goes, where Sanderson takes it, and how he wraps it all up. One of the great things I think about Sanderson with this is that he specifically was like, the publisher wanted more and more and more books. You know, he wanted a sequel series, he wanted a prequel series, they wanted all this stuff. And Sanderson was like, no, I won't write it. He was like, this was Jordan's world, Jordan's characters, Jordan's story. And I finished it for him, for the fans, for other fans like himself. And you can tell that Sanderson is a huge fan by the way that he has written this book. He knows these books inside out. And on top of that, he is not afraid to show that knowledge, that expertise, and to refer back to these past events and to try and link in, you know, these prophecies together and all that sort of stuff. Really, really well done. Yeah. Hard to even say, like, hard to talk more about how much I love this than I currently am. But yeah, absolutely loved it. Huge recommendation from me. Cannot wait to read the next book. Have you read The Gathering Storm? Drop down in the comments below and let me know what you thought. Please stay tuned to the channel, drop a subscribe here, and if you click that bell icon, it will notify you when I upload new videos, and you can keep an eye out for the full spoiler discussion of this book with my friend Matt from Bask in the Story. He has now started the book, and we've messaged back and forth a couple of times. I'm kind of letting him discover it and trying not to poison him too much with my like huge enthusiasm. I literally had to record this at like, it's almost 11 o'clock at night, and that's like the only thing that stopped me from like literally screaming, because I'll wake the entire family up. But yeah, you should read this book. If you haven't read this book and you've read the previous 11 Wheel of Time books, Sanderson does not fail. It's fantastic. Go out, buy it, read it, listen to it. Please just get it in your brain. Thanks so much for watching. Please like the video if you liked it. Drop that comment down below telling me what you thought of this book. And of course, subscribe to the channel to be notified when we go live with our spoiler discussion. Thanks so much for watching. I'll speak to you soon.